What is up, dreamers? Figment 494 here, coming to you straight from your imagination, and today I have for you my 2017 Pokemon Regionals Memphis deck list profile. Now, I'm going to jump right into it here. I was running Metagross GX is the deck I was running. Metagross, technically Necrozma here, which I'll get to later. Ran that to the 2017 Regional Championships held in Memphis, Tennessee. I went 5-2-2 and finished 147th out of 999 Masters. And technically bubbled top 128 because a lot of people finished 5-2-2 due to like massive amount of ties for the tournament. But I'm going to move on straight to the deck profile here. I've got 4 Metagross, 3 Metang, and 4 Beldum. Now, obviously, I mean, this is just cookie cutter deck building at this point, but of course, you want to run the maximum consistency was my goal for Memphis, trying to make sure I can always draw into Beldum, or draw into what I need without having to Ultra Ball or have to go for a Beacon with it with an Alolan Vulpix. Now, of course, consistency being the main point of this deck. We're running 3 Tapu Leles. This is mostly in part, so if I have 1 Tapu Lele prized, I could have a Lele in the beginning of the game to go for a Bridget, and then still have a Lele left over potentially late game for maybe an N on my opponent, or a Guzma to secure the game. Now, of course, as I mentioned earlier, I run Necrozma in the list. I run 2 Necrozma, mainly for that Black Ray GX attack, which does 100 damage to each Pokemon that is a GX or EX. Now, also the other secondary attack of the Necrozma, which is Prismatic Burst, does discard for all Psychic Energy from this Pokemon, and this Pokemon does 60 more damage for each card you discard this way. Now, sneak peek into the energy count for this video, run 4 Psychics. So with this attack, you can do 250 damage with Prismatic Burst. Add a Choice Band onto that, you can one-shot in Pokemon such as Metagross or Solgaleo in the mirror match. Now, also to increase consistency in the list, we also have Alolan Vulpix. This is more so to help for setup if you go second. Now, typically going first is obviously your best way to go, so you can get a Lele for a Bridget to go for Beldums, and a Necrozma, and then begin setting up your entire field. However, getting a Alolan Vulpix start, not necessarily a bad thing for your deck, as you can Beacon first turn, you don't have to commit energy to it, and you can start setting up for Pokemon such as Metagross or Metang, or I found it very useful throughout the day for Beacon going for a Lele in order to get a supporter, or potentially a Metang, or maybe potentially go for a couple Pokemon to bait my opponent into playing an N against me. Now, a couple tech cards for the deck that really, I believe, set it apart from a lot of other lists. Ran 1 Espeon EX. Now, the purpose of Espeon EX actually goes into coincidence with Necrozma. Miraculous Shrine de-evolves the opponent's Pokemon from its high stage evolution. Now, of course, in the mirror match with Metagross EX, or GX, geez. Don't even know what Pokemon I'm talking about now. Metagross GX. A simple Black Ray, putting 100 damage on every single Metagross. Its highest evolution is 90 HP. So an Espeon would knock out most Metagross, if not all of them. And then in addition to that, of course, Black Ray, just being able to spread damage, has multi-purpose use to it. Against Fire decks, just being able to place 100 damage on the board and then come in with Tapu Lele to clean up after the fact is very, very consistent. And in addition, of course, Espeon just is a good card in general to slow your opponent down if you have a lot of damage counters spread across the board. Or in a lot of decks that have been gaining popularity from this tournament, one of the most popular decks from this tournament was Lycanroc Zoroark. Being able to take a one-hit KO on a Zoroark or a Lycanroc may not be as efficient with Prismatic Burst, so getting a Black Ray off and then coming in with an Espeon following such could very easily put you in a position to knock out, take multiple prizes, and force your opponent into an awkward situation where they have to play an Acerola or use cards of healing in order to gain traction on the field. Now, of course, Espeon's not our only tech card in the matchup. We have 1 Magearna EX in list. This may come as of recent Metagross and Solgaleo decks have been adding Magearna in more often, specifically for Espeon. So in the mirror match, a lot of times Espeon is not used in Metagross, so you may be able to catch a couple opponents off guard immediately with the Black Ray. I was able to do this at a League Cup. I played against an opponent that was playing Solgaleo Metagross. I let him algorithm. He set up 3 Metagross and a Solgaleo by turn 2. Or no, not turn 2. It was turn 3. Apologies. And with that, basically, coming in with Black Ray, next turn Ultra Ball for Miraculous Shrine, wipe out the entire field. It comes in handy a lot. Of course, now, even though while that's a good play, Mystic Heart, the ability, prevents that. Mystic Heart prevents all effects on your opponent's attacks except damage done to each of your opponent's Pokemon that has any metal energy attached to it, and existing effects are not removed. So, of course, this may not be as efficient against a Grey Ninja matchup. This is the main other purpose of Magearna in the list. It prevents against a Shadow Stitch if you have a metal energy attached to Magearna, Metagross, and other Pokemon on the field. Of course, Necrozma's ability only really came in handy against Silvally, which I didn't face at all throughout the day. Now, of course, another tech card, of course, love our tech cards. We run one Dhelmise. Dhelmise has the ability Steelworker, which allows all of my Steel-type attacks to do 10 more damage to the opponent's Pokemon. Now, with Metagross, its initial attack, Giga Impact, or Giga Hammer, my bad, does 150 damage. Now, combined with a Choice Band, this adds to 180, which on most counts can knock out Pokemon such as Necrozma, Tapu Lele, Espeon, Magearna. It does has a big impact on the game, being able to one-shot Pokemon. Now, Dhelmise adds the extra 10 damage. 10 damage may not seem like much, but in a numbers game like this and how the format has been lately, Pokemon such as Buzzwole, who is featured on our mat here, has 190 HP. Having a Dhelmise in the deck allows for the Metagross to easily hit the perfect 190 damage. This also fits well onto a Zygarde, Turtonator, Ho-Oh, and other popular Pokemon that have that nice 190 HP. Now, of course, mentioning Turtonator and Ho-Oh, you might be thinking, oh, this deck dies to fire. I mean, yeah, I have Necrozma and Vulpix, but how much does that really help? Well, I've got something for you. This is Altar of the Sun. Now, obviously, it's not like I'm introducing a new concept here of running Altar. I believe it's been fairly popular as of late with Metagross, so I'm not the only one who's thinking out of the box here with this. Card prevents for all Fire and Steel-type Pokemon. It has no weakness. So your Metagross can now tank a hit from a Volcanion or a Turtonator, or forces your opponent to hit the perfect 3 Steam Up on a Turtonator to get a knockout. Or maybe 2 with a Choice Band. Either way, it's making your opponent stretch for more damage, and being able to hit those awkward numbers really puts you at an advantage, I believe, against a lot of these matchups. And of course, on the games where you don't get the Altar, still having Necrozma and Vulpix may not be as consistent, because due to the fact that we did cut a couple cards in order to fit this, such as like supporters such as Bridget and Sycamores, or not Sycamores, Ends. However, having Altar in the deck is very useful against Volcanion. And in terms of actual matchups, throughout the weekend at Memphis, I faced one Volcanion deck. I did lose to it due to my first game I had both Altars prized, so completely doesn't help there. I honestly played the game as if I had my Altars, until I realized on the second Sycamore and my Search Through with an Ultra Ball that, oh hey, both my Altars prized, I'm just going to scoop this game. And on the game that I did have the Altar, I did have some rough draws throughout the day, so it's, of course, unavoidable. Consistency, of course, still very good with the deck. The deck had a couple of games where it didn't draw very well, but the losses and ties weren't as blowout games. It came down to at least a couple prizes for the game, or a Guzma in hand. Now, of course, we're talking about consistency cards. We're on 4 Sycamore in this list. This is mainly due to the fact that you can safely run 4 Sycamore in this list because Metagross' ability, Geotech System, which I didn't touch on earlier, kind of important, main figurehead of this deck. It's once during your turn, you may attach a Psychic or Metal Energy card from your discard pile to your active Pokemon. Now, Sycamore discards cards from your hand. Now, if you have energies that you're discarding from your hand due to a Sycamore, this benefits setting up your field late game for a Geotech system. Not necessarily late game, but just being able to set up your field with a couple of Geotech systems. Now, of course, we did cut 1 end for one of these Altars, and that's what I was working on when I made the list. Having 3 end is just more of consistency, just being able to disrupt your opponent in the late game, maybe get them into a low card and hand for a comeback win. I had one game where I started to lose against a Gardevoir, which shouldn't happen, but, you know, it did. I was down, they needed 2 more prizes to win, and them to 2. I ended up to a 5 card hand, allowed me to set up with a Vulpix for a turn, and allowed me to draw into the rest of what I needed to in order to secure the game. Now, of course, Guzma, pivotal card in a lot of games, and if not every matchup, run 2 Guzma on this list. Couple reasons there, a lot of people were criticizing me on the fact that I only run 2 instead of 3. Well, ready for criticism, I only run 1 Bridget, so you know where this is going. Guzma, honestly, with this list, I don't find it very useful. And a lot of times, of course, being able to Metagross, being able to have a Choice Band on a Metagross for a knockout on a Lele is very useful. However, a lot of times, if you're in that position to where you're needing a Guzma for the game, you can typically just Black Ray and set up a Pokemon for a knockout anyways. Of course, not necessarily the biggest issue, but Guzma, of course, a good card. Now with another thing I didn't touch on with Delma is Anchor Shot's its attack. For 1 Psychic and 2 Colorless, you hit for 70, and then the defending Pokemon can't retreat during your opponent's next turn. Now, Anchor Shot has proven very useful over the weekend for me, locking in Pokemon such as Regirock, which is now being run with a lot of Buzzwole decks. You lock in a Regirock, attach a Choice Band, it's a 2-hit KO, but in that time that you lock a Regirock into the active, they can't attack with a Buzzwole, meaning a lot of Jet Punch damage that would be dealing damage to Metagross or knocking out a Vulpix. You can be sitting there setting up a couple Metangs, a couple Metagross, just setting up the rest of your field. So as soon as that Buzzwole comes up, you can have a Delmise ready to just hit damage on it. Or maybe a Delmise dies to a Buzzwole, which is only 1 prize, and it's resistance to fighting, so it's even better. So a Jet Punch only does 10 damage to it, so have fun with that. So of course, that in general is just a good card to lock people in with the Guzma. Now, of course, as I mentioned a minute ago, Bridget, honestly, I would look for a card to cut in this list. And if I had my personal opinion after this weekend, how the list ran, I would cut probably 1 Alter due to the lack of showing in Volcanion as of late, to add another Bridget to the list, meaning you could get out Beldums easier, a lot of the rest of your setup basically faster, and it would give you a better chance of drawing into it initially off your opening hand as opposed to drawing into a Lele. Now, that's another card you could probably swap out as well for and drop a Lele for maybe another supporter of some kind, so you don't have to play Pokemon to go for it. That would be another thing I would look to change. Now, of course, this is just a deck profile from what I actually ran there, so I'm just running off of that and that alone. Now, of course, consistency, main things here. We got 4 Ultra Balls. That's, I want to say it's more of a standard now, but being able to have an Ultra Ball for a Metagross or for a Lele in the beginning of the game to go for a Bridget, very useful, and honestly, you kind of need a 4 Ultra Balls a lot of times. And also, in this matchup, or in this deck, I should say, when you're trying to discard energy from your hand so you can set up a Geotech, having an Ultra Ball to do so is very, very efficient. Now, of course, other tool cards in this list, as these are actually the only tool cards in this list, we run 3 Choice Band. 3 is the main big number. I like 3. 3 is a pretty number for me. I like 3 Ns, 3 Leles, 3 Metangs. 3 is a good number. Choice Band, obviously, we don't really necessarily need, because with Necrozma, if we're hitting something over 190 HP or 200 HP Pokemon like Zoroark or Lycanroc, you can do that using Prismatic Burst, or with a setup Black Ray, and being able to 2-shot with a Metagross, or 1-shot, I should say, after a Black Ray. Another way you could do it is having, you don't really need a Choice Band most times, so being able to Black Ray early on to set up damage on every Pokemon in the field, and then come in after the fact of Metagross to clean up is very efficient. Now, of course, going back to consistency, and 3 being my favorite number, we've got 3 rare candies here. Now, most lists mainly try to run 4, so you can guarantee a Metagross the second turn. What I noticed with this format, and how with cards like Zoroark being more popular and being able to draw cards, a lot of the time you're safe to set up a Vulpix to sit there a turn, go for a Beacon to go for a Metang, or just sit there and let your Pokemon build up. So, obviously, I just cut 1 rare candy mainly to just create space for other cards, such as like the extra Alter, and just to, in general, add another Metang to the mix, so you're not banking off hitting a rare candy. In addition to that, for cards such as Espeon, it forces your opponent to hit a higher HP gap as opposed to just hitting 60. You force them to have, maybe with Feather Arrows, being able to hit 100, which includes a couple Tapu Koko Flying Flips. Like, it creates a better number for you to hit, or for your opponent to hit with an Espeon, so you can create more of a disruption in that regard. And rare candies as a whole, they're nice to have most times, and of course getting that nice turn to Metagross is always efficient, especially if you're trying to get an early Black Ray off on the game, depending on what your matchup is. Having enough rare candies, you'll draw into it on a lot of occasions. Now, of course, going to reiterate this again, 3 favorite number, 3 Max Potion. Now, Max Potion is a crucial card, I think, in this deck, and this goes mainly for Necrozma. Necrozma's attack, if recall, you discard all your second energies. So, with a Prismatic Burst, I could go for a knockout on a Pokemon. My opponent would attack me the next turn. If they don't one-hit KO me, with a lot of decks being 2-hit KO decks, such as Golisopod and Zoroark, you can take a hit, basically, with Necrozma, and then proceed to Max Potion the next turn, or the following turn, and then reset that. And with Geotech systems, you could get another attack off, taking maybe even 4 prizes with a single Necrozma, which could prove very efficient going in throughout the game. Now, of course, other uses of this is with Metagross, you attack, then you usually retreat, because the retreat cost of Metagross, of course, is 3. So your 3 that you use to attack, you retreat with the 3, and then you Geotech system the remaining energies from the retreat cost onto a new Metagross. And the damage, of course, would still remain on that said Metagross. So Max Potion, of course, very useful card. In other decks, actually, I went to League with this the other day, or not really League, it's just a local tournament. I went 5-0 with this list against a Decidueye Zoroark. This is my favorite matchup. My opponent set up 3 Decidueyes and a Zoroark. No, 3 Decidueyes, and had a Zoroark in the active. I used Black-Gray. I did 100 damage to every single Decidueye on the field. The following turn, I came with an Espeon and Miraculous Shrine, and basically killed all 3 of them. And he used rare candies for all of them, so he had to slow evolve the rest of the game. Now, of course, once in the late game, once he finally had one into Decidueye set up, he started sniping out my Espeon, because obviously to him that was the largest threat on the field. Now, of course, with Espeon having that awkward 170, at one point my opponent had 160 damage on it. Alright, well, Max Potion healed off, and my opponent conceded after that, but of course, Max Potion is just a very disruptive card in a lot of scenarios. And if you're looking to stall early on, if you have maybe a dead hand, you have a Lele in the active, it can take a couple hits, Max Potion, no big deal, you don't have to worry about it for the rest of the game. Now, of course, getting into the last couple cards here in the list, we have 2 Field Blower. With Garbodor and Garb decks seeing a lot of decrease in play, Field Blower isn't as necessary in a lot of matchups. The only matchups I saw it prove useful for was for matchups against Volcanion, which not necessarily at Memphis, but in general. Field Blower just being able to get rid of Fighting Fury Belts, so with the Dhelmise and with the Choice Band on the Metagross, you can get a one-hit KO on a Ho-Oh, or a Turtonator, or Pokemon like that, or similar in nature. And honestly, just getting rid of Choice Bands on opponents' benches, and if they set up Pokemon early on, or Stadiums early on, a Stadium card that a lot of people have been playing more recently with decks such as Gardevoir, or just a tech card in a lot of matchups for Zoroark, just running a Parallel City. Well, now you can Field Blow away a Parallel City maybe after you get rid of, I don't know, Magearna or Tapu Lele. It might be taking up space on your bench. Being able to get rid of the Parallel City could prove useful for you. Now, last item card in this list, of course, is 1 Rescue Stretcher. Why 1 Rescue Stretcher? Because I like playing risky, I don't know. I mainly liked it for the fact that you can just put 1 Pokemon from your hand. It's useful, it's versatile in that regard. I don't really have much to say about Rescue Stretcher as a whole, other than the fact that the card, your goal for the deck is, if you're going to go to discard like multiple Metagross to your first turn with a Sycamore, Rescue Stretcher, bring them back late game, Rescue Stretcher middle or to the end of the game for a Lele back into hand maybe. There's a variety of plays that you could do. If your Espeon dies early on and you just Sycamore it away, Rescue Stretcher, bring it right back, no problemo. So, I mean, as a whole, Rescue Stretcher, good card in general. Now, of course, the last few cards in this list, we've got Metal Energy, run 7 Metal Energy. I don't know. Here, I should probably check to see what you guys can actually see. That'd probably be smart. So we've got 7 Metal Energy here. Of course, Metal Energy is one of the key points of this deck. If I were to revisit this deck in the future, or maybe going into upcoming League Cups, I might cut a Metal Energy most likely for like another Psychic. Psychic Energies only run 4. Mainly 4 is like the magic number for this deck. If you get 4 Psychic Energies onto a Necrozma, with a Choice Band you can hit 270 damage. That's just in general, like, that's pretty much going to one-hit KO everything in the format. With 3 you can hit 220. Not necessarily as good, however, it does not get a knockout on Pokemon such as Zoroark, which has resistance to Necrozma, so that's why having the 4 is useful. A lot of situations, honestly, with like Lycanroc having 3 Psychics is just good to get knockouts on. And in general, this is my deck for Memphis. Again, 5-2-2. My wins were against, I faced 2 Gardevoirs throughout the course of the day, so of course those were not easy wins, I should say, because I almost screwed up a couple times. My favorite game was when I played against a Gardevoir and my opponent really didn't care, and I just took a Magearna and took 5 prizes with it. Had a grand old time with that. But my one loss of the day came in the beginning, in the first round, actually, against a good friend, Austin Elias, who ended up making top 32 for the tournament, so congrats to him. and he was playing Glisspod Zoroark, which was a really good game, honestly. However, I had initially came to my match late due to the fact that I was talking to a judge. Now, because of this, I ended up getting marked late on my slip, so naturally I was just like, okay, we gotta get the game started. Like, as it is, I'm already late, we don't want to slow down the process more. Ended up coming into time where I technically could not win the game. However, I wanted to argue for the fact that I was held up due to a judge that I was not capable of making it to my match on time. So, of course, I fought this basically. I was the reason that all of Memphis got stalled, so I held up the largest Pokemon tournament in the world. Props to me. I'm so proud of myself. That's the one little claim to fame I can make about the entire tournament for myself. But, held up the entire tournament, ended up going up to the tournament organizer, who was Jimmy Ballard, and actually props, well, since I'm discussing it, props to all the judges and all the people who helped make this event possible, and to all the sponsors that helped in making the team stages and everything. The event was very well run, and props to them. Excuse me. Of course, again, amazing event. Had a blast over the weekend. Honestly, I've never been to Memphis. It was a great time. Got to see a lot of my friends. Honestly, the tournament as a whole was great. But, of course, I ended up getting a loss for that round because due to the fact that they had to go by what the rules said, and despite there being other reasons for my tardiness to the round, they had to give me the loss there. Which, honestly, I can't really complain for the day. My only other loss of the day was to a Volcanion deck. My two ties, my one tie was against Kevin Baxter, who was running I don't even know what. It was Counter Energy, it was Flippity Flap, Shame, and everything together. I still don't know what that deck is, honestly. Kevin, if you're watching this, please explain in the comments. I'm really confused. My other tie for the day actually came against a friend of mine who went to the league. It was kind of a bit of a slow play game, but you know, honestly, when you're playing at such a high level tournament, honestly, I play slow sometimes too, so honestly, thinking out your plays is the smartest thing to do, but, you know, take a tie there, and then the rest of my wins, I believe I faced a Sylveon, two Gardevoirs, I faced a Buzzwole deck, and I faced Lycanroc Zoroark. So all in all for the day, pretty good against a lot of the new meta decks that are appearing, with Buzzwole Lycanroc being a win for myself, and for Buzzwole, which proved to be very popular in this tournament. Of course, doing well against that. So, anyways, guys, this is my deck profile for Memphis, Metagross GX, Necrozma, and I hope you guys enjoyed. Feel free, I'm going to be uploading some more channels, or not channels, yes. I'm going to create like a bajillion more channels for myself, because I'm clearly so popular. I'm going to be creating a couple new videos here in partnership with Max Dairy Productions. I don't believe I can link a video from my mobile YouTube station that I have here, but, you know, whatever, you'll keep an eye out for them. It's going to be some quality content. And yeah, let's wrap it out, guys. Have a good one, and peace out.